Jake was working as a security guard at a shopping mall in Ohio when this happened. He had been working the night shift for about 6 months. The mall closed at 9 p.m. and his shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was a pretty easy job, mostly just walking around, making sure no one had broken in, indicating that all the store gates were properly locked, occasionally dealing with teenagers who thought it would be fun to sneak in after hours. On this particular night in late October, Jake was doing his usual rounds around 2 a.m. when he noticed something strange. As he walked past the food court, he could have sworn he saw movement near the old photo booth that hadn't been used in years. The mall had been planning to remove it for months, but it just sat there, collecting dust. Jake shined his flashlight toward the booth and didn't see anything unusual, so he continued his patrol. But as he walked away, he heard what sounded like carnival music playing very faintly. He stopped and listened carefully, but the sound seemed to fade away. About an hour later, Jake was checking the north wing of the mall when he heard the music again. This time, it was definitely coming from the direction of the food court. He grabbed his radio to call his supervisor, but realized he was probably just being paranoid. Halloween was only a few days away, and maybe one of the stores had left some decorations running. When Jake made it back to the food court, the music had stopped again. But this time, there was something different about the photo booth. The curtain that normally hung across the entrance was pushed aside, and there appeared to be someone sitting inside. Jake called out, asking if anyone was there. No response. He approached the booth cautiously and shined his flashlight inside. What he saw made his blood run cold. Sitting on the small bench inside the photo booth was a person dressed as a clown. The clown had wild orange hair, white face paint with exaggerated red lips, and was wearing a colorful polka dot outfit. But the most disturbing part was that the clown was completely motionless, sitting perfectly still with its hands folded in its lap, staring straight ahead. Jake's first thought was that someone had left a mannequin or decoration in the booth as a prank. But as he got closer, he could see the clown's chest rising and falling slightly. This was a real person. He called out again, louder this time, demanding that the person come out of the booth. The clown slowly turned its head toward Jake, maintaining eye contact, but still not speaking. The smile painted on its face seemed to grow wider. Jake immediately radioed for backup and called the police. He kept his flashlight trained on the clown while he waited, but the figure just sat there, motionless again, occasionally tilting its head like it was studying him. When the police arrived about 10 minutes later, Jake led them to the food court. But when they got there, the photo booth was empty. The curtain was back in place, and there was no sign that anyone had been there. The officers searched the entire mall, but found no trace of the clown. All the exits were still locked from the inside, and there was no way someone could have left without triggering the alarms. Security cameras around the food court showed Jake walking around with his flashlight, but they didn't capture anyone else in the area. Jake quit his job the next day. He told me that he couldn't shake the feeling that the clown was still somewhere in that mall, waiting in the shadows. The mall closed permanently 6 months later due to declining business, but Jake said he still drives past it sometimes and swears he can see lights moving around inside at night. Sarah was working from home during the pandemic lockdown in her Portland apartment when she first saw the clown. She lived on the 3rd floor of a 4-story building, and her apartment faced the parking lot with a clear view of the street. Since she was home all day, she had gotten into the habit of occasionally looking out the window while she worked, just to see what was happening in the neighborhood. One afternoon in July, Sarah noticed a clown standing in the parking lot. At first, she thought it might be someone entertaining kids in the area, since families were looking for outdoor activities during lockdown. The clown was wearing a traditional red and white striped outfit with a ruffled collar, white face paint, and a red nose. But as Sarah watched from her window, she realized the clown wasn't performing or interacting with anyone. It was just standing there, perfectly still, facing her building. She watched for about 5 minutes, and the clown never moved. Sarah found it odd, but went back to work. When she looked out the window again an hour later, the clown was gone. The next day, around the same time, the clown was back. Same spot, same motionless stance, facing the building. Sarah decided to go down and see what was going on. She took the elevator to the ground floor and walked outside, but when she got to the parking lot, there was no one there. This pattern continued for several days. Every afternoon between 2 and 3 p.m., Sarah would see the clown standing in the parking lot. But whenever she tried to get a closer look or went outside to investigate, the clown would be gone by the time she got there. Sarah started taking photos from her window, but the clown was always too far away to make out any clear details. She mentioned it to her neighbors, but no one else had seen anything unusual. After about a week of this, Sarah decided to stay by her window and watch continuously to see where the clown went. On a Thursday afternoon, she positioned herself at the window at 1:45 p.m. and waited. Right at 2 p.m., the clown appeared. But this time, instead of just standing in the parking lot, it was looking directly up at Sarah's window. Even from 3 stories up, she could tell it was staring right at her. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept watching. The clown raised one gloved hand and appeared to wave at her. Then it reached into its pocket and pulled out what looked like a small sign or piece of paper. The clown held up the sign, but Sarah couldn't read what it said from that distance. She grabbed a pair of binoculars she kept for bird watching and focused them on the clown. The sign had Sarah's name written on it in large red letters. Sarah immediately stepped away from the window and called the police. When they arrived 20 minutes later, the clown was gone again. The officers took a report and said they would increase patrols in the area, but there wasn't much else they could do. That night, Sarah barely slept. She kept the curtains closed and tried to avoid looking out the window. But around 3 a.m., she heard a sound that made her heart stop. Carnival music playing softly outside her building. Sarah crept to the window and carefully peered through a gap in the curtains. The clown was standing directly below her window, 3 stories down in the parking lot. It was looking up at her apartment and appeared to be swaying slightly to the music. Sarah called 911 immediately, but by the time police arrived, the clown was gone and the music had stopped. The next day, Sarah's landlord informed her that they had received a complaint about noise coming from her apartment in the middle of the night. When Sarah explained what had been happening, the landlord seemed skeptical, but agreed to check the security cameras. The footage from the parking lot cameras showed Sarah looking out her window multiple times over the past week, but there was never anyone else visible in the parking lot, according to the cameras. Sarah had been staring at empty space and taking pictures of nothing. Sarah moved out of the apartment 2 weeks later. She told me she still doesn't know if what she saw was real or if the isolation and stress of the pandemic had affected her mental state. But she said she'll never forget the feeling of being watched by something that might not have been entirely human. Marcus and his girlfriend Emma were parked near an abandoned farmhouse outside Denver when they saw the clown. They were 17 and had been dating for 8 months, often driving to secluded spots to spend time alone. There was a particular dirt road about 20 minutes from town that led to an old abandoned farm. The farmhouse had been empty for years, but the area was peaceful and private. So on a Friday night in October, Marcus and Emma drove out to their usual spot. They parked near a cluster of old oak trees about 100 yards from the abandoned farmhouse. It was a clear night with a full moon, so they had good visibility of the surrounding area. They had been there for about an hour, just talking and listening to music, when Emma pointed toward the farmhouse and asked Marcus if he saw something moving. Marcus looked in that direction, but didn't see anything unusual. A few minutes later, Emma grabbed Marcus's arm and said she definitely saw someone walking around the farmhouse. This time, Marcus saw it too, a figure moving slowly across the front porch of the old house. Marcus thought it might be another couple who had the same idea about using the area for privacy, so he flashed his headlights a couple of times to let them know someone else was there. The figure on the porch stopped moving. After a few moments, the figure began walking toward their car. As it got closer, Marcus and Emma could see that it was a person dressed as a clown. The clown was wearing baggy overalls, oversized shoes, and had stark white face paint with black circles around its eyes and a wide red mouth. The clown approached their car slowly, maintaining what appeared to be a friendly demeanor. When it got within about 50 feet, it stopped and began performing what looked like a mime routine, pretending to be trapped in an invisible box. Marcus and Emma watched for a minute, unsure of what to do. The performance seemed harmless enough, but something about the situation felt wrong. They were in the middle of nowhere, and it was almost midnight. Why would a clown be out here performing for no one? The clown finished its mime routine and took an exaggerated bow. Then it began walking toward their car again. Marcus started the engine, ready to leave if things got weird, when the clown got to within about 20 feet of the car, stopped again, and began juggling 3 balls that seemed to glow in the moonlight. The juggling was actually quite skillful, and the clown maintained perfect form while slowly continuing to approach the vehicle. Emma whispered to Marcus that they should leave, but Marcus was curious about what the clown wanted. The performer seemed friendly enough, and Marcus thought maybe it was just someone practicing their act in private. The clown finished juggling and walked right up to the passenger side of the car where Emma was sitting. It tapped gently on the window with one gloved finger. Emma reluctantly rolled down the window about 2 inches. The clown leaned down and spoke in a high-pitched, sing-song voice. "Would you like to see a magic trick?" Before either of them could respond, the clown reached into its pocket and pulled out a deck of cards. He shuffled them with impressive dexterity and asked Emma to pick a card. Emma looked at Marcus, who shrugged and nodded. Emma reached through the small gap in the window and selected a card from the deck. Keen, the clown told her to look at it and remember it, then put it back in the deck. Keen, the clown shuffled the cards again and then spread them out in its hands. "Is this your card?" the clown asked, holding up the ace of spades. Emma shook her head. It wasn't her card. The clown's painted smile seemed to falter for a moment. "Are you sure?" it asked, its voice dropping to a more serious tone. Emma confirmed that it wasn't the right card. She had picked the 7 of hearts. The clown stared at Emma for several long seconds without speaking. Then it slowly reached into its other pocket and pulled out a different card. It was the 7 of hearts, but something was wrong with it. The card appeared to be stained with something dark, and there were what looked like small holes poked through it. "How about this one?" the clown asked, holding the damaged card right up to the window. Marcus had seen enough. He put the car in drive and hit the gas, spinning gravel as they sped away from the area. In the rearview mirror, he could see the clown standing motionless in the road, watching them leave. When they got back to town, Marcus and Emma went straight to Emma's house and told her parents what had happened. Emma's father was a local police officer, and he said he would check out the area the next day. The following afternoon, Officer Peterson drove out to the abandoned farm with a partner. They found no sign that anyone had been there recently, but when they searched the farmhouse, they discovered something disturbing in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Someone had set up what appeared to be a makeshift living space. There was a sleeping bag, some canned food, and various clown props scattered around the room. On one wall, dozens of playing cards were tacked up in no particular pattern. Many of the cards had holes poked through them or were stained with what looked like dried blood. The officers also found a notebook filled with dates, times, and locations around the county. Next to many of the entries were descriptions of cars and license plate numbers. Marcus's license plate number was on the most recent page. Police set up surveillance of the area for several weeks, but the clown never returned. The case was never solved, and no one ever figured out who the person was or why they were camping out at the abandoned farm. Marcus told me that he and Emma broke up a few months later, partly because the incident had left them both too shaken to return to any of their old hangout spots. He said he still gets nervous when he sees clowns at parties or events, and he always checks his rearview mirror extra carefully when driving on rural roads at night.